So we sort of work with them, but not in those kind of be here in Lynn on an absolutely beautiful day. For centuries, our United Kingdom has had a proud history of welcoming people from overseas, including many fleeing persecution. My own great-grandfather came from Turkey in fear of his life because our country offered sanctuary to his outspoken journalism. And when you look back over the centuries, as people have come seeking refuge or simply in search of somewhere to build a better life, you see that this is the very stuff our history is made of. From the French Huguenots to the Jewish refugees from Tsarist Russia, to the docking of the Empire Windrush, to the South Asians fleeing East Africa, to the many, many others who have come from different countries at different times for different reasons. All have wanted to be here because our United Kingdom is a beacon of openness and generosity. And all, in turn, have contributed magnificently to the amazing story of the UK. Today, that proud history of safe and legal migration is ultimately responsible for many of those working in our hospitals and on the front line of our response to the pandemic, for more than 60% of the England football team at the final of Euro 2020, for many of our country's leading figures in the worlds of business, art and culture, and I'm pleased to say for ever-growing numbers of people serving in public life, including colleagues of mine, like Nadeem Zahawi, who escaped with his family from Saddam Hussein's Iraq, Dominic Raab, whose Jewish father came to Britain from Czechoslovakia to escape Nazi Germany, and Priti Patel, whose family fled persecution in Uganda. So I'm proud that this government has continued the great British tradition of providing sanctuary to those in need. In fact, doing more to resettle vulnerable people in the UK through safe and legal routes than any other government in recent history. Since 2015, we've offered a place to over 185,000 men, women and children seeking refuge, more than the entire population of Sunderland, and more than any other similar resettlement schemes in Europe. This includes almost 100,000 British nationals overseas threatened by draconian security laws in Hong Kong, 20,000 through our Syrian scheme, 13,000 from Afghanistan to whom we owe debts of honour, and around 50,000 Ukrainians. And we're not only supporting British nationals and those settled in the UK to bring potentially hundreds of thousands to their extended family from Ukraine, we're also welcoming unlimited numbers of refugees from that conflict as the British people open their homes in one of the biggest movements of refugees to this country that we've ever known. And as we work with local authorities and the devolved administrations to welcome those coming from Ukraine into our communities, we will also find accommodation across our whole UK for all those who have come here previously but who are currently in hotels. Because it makes absolutely no sense for the taxpayer to foot those bills running to almost £5 million a day, with the sum total of those we accommodate being concentrated in just a third of local authorities. It is controlled immigration through safe and legal routes which enables us to make generous offers of sanctuary while managing the inevitable pressures on our public services, such that we can give all those who come here the support they need to rebuild their lives, to integrate and to thrive. But the quid pro quo for this generosity is that we cannot sustain a parallel illegal system. Our compassion may be infinite, but our capacity to help people is not. We can't ask the British taxpayer to write a blank cheque to cover the costs of anyone who might want to come and live here. Uncontrolled immigration creates unmanageable demands on our NHS and on our welfare state. It overstretches our local schools, our housing and public transport, and creates unsustainable pressure to build on precious green spaces. Nor is it fair
on those who are seeking to come here legally if others can bypass the system. It's a striking fact that around 7 out of 10 of those arriving in small boats last year were men under 40, paying people smugglers to queue jump and taking up our capacity to help genuine women and child refugees. This is particularly perverse as those attempting crossings are not directly fleeing imminent peril, as is the intended purpose of the asylum system. They've passed through manifestly safe countries, including many in Europe, where they could and should have claimed asylum. It is this rank unfairness of a system that can be exploited by gangs which risks eroding public support for the whole concept of asylum. The British people voted several times to control our borders, not to close them, but to control them. So just as Brexit allowed us to take back control of legal immigration by replacing free movement with our points-based system, we're also taking back control of illegal immigration with a long-term plan for asylum in this country. It is a plan that will ensure the UK has a world-leading asylum offer, providing generous protection to those directly fleeing the worst of humanity by settling thousands of people every year through safe and legal routes. And I emphasize this. So whether you're fleeing Putin or Assad, our aim is that you should not need to turn to the people smugglers or any other kind of illegal option. But to deliver that, we must first ensure that the only route to asylum in the UK is a safe and legal one, and that those who try to jump the queue or abuse our system will find no automatic path to settlement in our country, but rather be swiftly and humanely removed to a safe third country or their country of origin. And the most tragic of all forms of illegal migration, which we must end with this approach, is the barbaric trade in human misery conducted by the people smugglers in the Channel. Before Christmas, 27 people drowned, and in the weeks ahead, there could be many more losing their lives at sea, and whose bodies may never be recovered. Around 600 came across the Channel yesterday. In just a few weeks, this could again reach 1,000 a day. I accept that these people, whether they're 600 or 1,000, are in search of a better life, the opportunities that the United Kingdom provides, and the hope of a fresh start. But it is these hopes, those dreams, that have been exploited. These vile people smugglers are abusing the vulnerable and turning the Channel into a watery graveyard, with men, women and children drowning in unseaworthy boats and suffocating in refrigerated lorries. And even if they do make it here, we know only too well some of the horrendous stories of exploitation over the years, from the nail bars of East London to the cocklebeds of Morecambe Bay, as illegal migration makes people more vulnerable to the brutal abuse of ruthless gangs. So, we must halt this appalling trade and defeat the people smugglers. That's why we're passing the Nationality and Borders Bill, which allows us for the first time to distinguish between people coming here legally and illegally, and for this distinction to affect how your asylum claim progresses and your status in the UK if that claim is successful. It will enable us to issue visa penalties against those countries that refuse to accept returns of foreign criminals and failed asylum seekers. It will clean up the abuse of our legal system, introducing a one-stop shop that will end the cycle of last-minute and vexatious claims and appeals that so often thwart and delay removals. And it will end the absurd practice of asylum-seeking adults claiming to be children to strengthen their claims and access better services. Crucially, it will also allow us to prosecute those who arrive illegally with life sentences for anyone piloting the boats, and to identify, intercept, and investigate these boats. From today, the Royal Navy will take over operational command from Border Force in the Channel, taking primacy for our operational response at sea, in line with many of our international partners, with the aim that no boat makes it to the UK undetected. This will be supported by £50 million of new funding for new boats, aerial surveillance and military personnel, in addition to the existing task force of patrol vessels, Wildcat helicopters, search and rescue aircraft, drones and remotely piloted aircraft. This will send a clear message to those piloting the boats. If you risk other people's lives in the Channel, you risk spending your own life in prison. People who do make it to the UK will be taken not to hotels at vast public expense. Rather, they will be housed in accommodation centres like those in Greece, with the first of these to open shortly. At the same time, we are expanding our immigration detention facilities to assist with the removal of those with no right to remain in the UK. We're investing over £500 million in those efforts, and this is on top of overhauling our arrivals infrastructure here in Kent, with new processing facilities now operational at Western Jetfoil and at Manston. But we will need to go further in breaking the business model of these gangs. So from today, our new migration and economic development partnership will mean that anyone entering the UK illegally, as well as those who have arrived illegally since January the 1st, may now be relocated to Rwanda. This innovative approach, driven by our shared humanitarian impulse and made possible by Brexit freedoms, will provide safe and legal routes for asylum while disrupting the business model of the gangs. Because it means that economic migrants taking advantage of the asylum system will not get to stay in the UK, while those in genuine need will be properly protected, including with access to legal services on arrival in Rwanda, and given the opportunity to build a new life in that dynamic country, supported by the funding we are providing. The deal we've done is uncapped, and Rwanda will have the capacity to resettle tens of thousands of people in the years ahead. And let's be clear, Rwanda is one of the safest countries in the world, globally recognized for its record on welcoming and integrating migrants. Later this year, it will welcome leaders from across the Commonwealth. And before the pandemic, in 2018, the IMF said Rwanda was the world's fourth fastest growing economy. We're confident that our new migration partnership is fully compliant with our international legal obligations. But nevertheless, we expect this will be challenged in the courts. And if this country is seen as a soft touch for illegal migration by some of our partners, it is precisely because we have such a formidable army of politically motivated lawyers who for years have made it their business to thwart removals and frustrate the government. So I know that this system will not take effect overnight, but I promise that we will do whatever it takes to deliver this new approach. Initially within the limits of the existing legal and constitutional frameworks, but also prepared to explore any and all further legal reforms which may be necessary. Because this problem has bedeviled our country for too long and caused far too much human suffering and tragedy. And this is the government that refuses to duck the difficult decisions. This is the government that makes the big calls, and I profoundly believe there is simply no other option. And I say to those who would criticize our plan today, well, we have a plan. What is your alternative? Now, I know there are some who believe we should just turn these boats back at sea. But after much study and consultation, including with Border Force, the police, National Crime Agency, and military maritime experts, to whom, by the way, I pay tribute for all the incredible work that they do dealing with this problem as things stand, it's clear that there are extremely limited circumstances when you can safely do this in the English Channel. And it doesn't help that this approach, I don't think, would be supported by our French partners. And I've got to say to you that relying solely on this course of action is simply not practical in my view. And I know, of course, that there are others who would say we should just negotiate a deal with France and the EU. And we've made repeated and generous offers to our French friends, and we will continue to press them and the EU for the comprehensive returns agreement that would solve this problem. We remain grateful to the gendarmes on the beach for the joint intelligence work and the cooperation that has stopped thousands of boats. We would like to deepen that work, and we continue to believe that a deal with France and the EU is in the national interests of all our countries. But we must have our own framework for full sovereignty over our borders, and we must find a way to stop these boats now, not lose thousands more lives while waiting for a deal that just doesn't exist. And I know that there will be a vocal minority who will think that these measures are draconian and lacking in compassion. And I simply don't agree. There is no humanity or compassion in allowing desperate and innocent people to have their dreams of a better life exploited by ruthless gangs as they're taken to their deaths in unseaworthy boats. And there's no humanity or compassion in endlessly condemning the people smugglers, but then time and again ducking the big calls needed to break the business model of the gangs and stop these boats from coming. And there's no humanity or compassion in calling for unlimited, safe and legal routes, offering the false hope of asylum in the UK to anyone who wants it, because that is just unsustainable. There are currently 80 million displaced people in the world, many in failed states where governments can't meet their aspirations. In an era of mobile connectivity, they are a call or a text away from potentially being swept up in the tide of people smuggling. The answer cannot be for the UK to become the haven for all of them. That's a call for open borders by the back door, a political argument masquerading as a humanitarian policy. Those in favour of this approach should be honest about it and argue for it openly. We reject it, as the British people have consistently rejected it at the ballot box, in favour of controlled immigration. We simply cannot have a policy of saying anyone who wants to live here can do so. We've got to be able to control who comes into this country and the terms on which they remain. And we must do this in the spirit of our history of providing refuge. And in that way, we can more than play our part in offering sanctuary to thousands fleeing persecution. But then, of course, other countries must play their part too. And that's what I think is most exciting about the partnership we've agreed with Rwanda today, because we believe it will become a new international standard in addressing the challenges of global migration and people smuggling. So I'm grateful for Rwanda's leadership and partnership, and we stand ready to work with other nations on similar agreements, as well as wider reforms to the international asylum framework. As I say, we will continue to work with our French friends to tackle the gangs. We will continue to lead cooperation with crime and intelligence partners across Europe. We will continue to seek a returns agreement with the EU or with France. But in the meantime, and for the foreseeable future, we need this new approach. The people smugglers are undermining confidence in our borders. They are betraying all those who do the right thing, who try to come here legally through forms of migration or the safe and legal routes provided for refuge. They are undermining the natural compassion and goodwill that people have towards refugees in this country, and they are endangering human life day after day. And though the way ahead will be hard, and though we can expect many challenges and many obstacles to be thrown up against this plan, I believe this plan is the right way forward, because the people smugglers must be stopped in order to save countless lives, and because tackling illegal migration is precisely the way to sustain a safe, legal, and generous offer of sanctuary to those in need. And that is in the very best traditions of this country and the values we stand for in the world. Thank you all very much indeed. I'm now going to go to the media for some questions. I'm going to go first to Nick Eardley of the BBC.
Thanks, Prime Minister. Is the plan to send asylum seekers to Rwanda a genuine answer? Is it a workable solution? Or is it an attempt to look tough on an issue which the government's failed to address in the last few years? And if I can ask about the fine you received earlier this week, do you still think you have the moral authority to govern? What would you say to the people watching at home who think that you have been guilty of hypocrisy for not following the rules you told them they must follow? And what would you say to the MPs who think you lied to them?
Well, thanks very much, Nick. And look, on your second point, I said quite a lot about this on, I think it was Tuesday. I'll be saying more when I update Parliament, as you can imagine, next week. And I think you probably have to wait until then for me to say more on that. But on whether this is a solution that is a magic bullet, as it were, that can deal with the problem of illegal migration across the Channel, I want to be absolutely clear with everybody. I think that this is necessary, but it is, of course, not sufficient. There are many other things that we need to get right. We need to make sure that our legal framework is capable of dealing with the problem, as well as the practical steps that we can take. But none of the reforms to our laws will really be any good without the basic ability to get in the heads of the people smugglers and make them understand that the deal they're offering their poor, vulnerable clients is not one that stacks up. And it's to get into the heads of the people who are coming across the Channel, risking their lives in this way, that they're much, much better off going for the safe and legal routes that we have, rather than paying to jump the queue and to risk their lives. Because if they go that way, if they come across the Channel illegally in these vessels, then they risk, as I've explained, ending up not in the UK but in Rwanda. And that is something that I believe will, over time, prove a very considerable deterrent. But there are several things that you've got to get right in addition to that policy, not least the legal framework. Because I've got no doubt at all that this will be challenged, and there will be a long way to go. But it's an indispensable component of the solution. Anushka Astana, ITV.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Prime Minister, the people you're talking about say they are fleeing persecution, and they often come from countries where there are no safe routes here in the UK. Why are you sending them with one-way tickets to a country where there are reports of ill treatment and torture in detention centres, and that your own government criticised last year for failing to investigate these alleged human rights violations? And a quick question, because I'm not patient enough to wait, so I hope you will answer it. But on Tuesday, you've admitted that you unknowingly misled Parliament. I just want to understand if you're going to put the record straight.
Yeah. Thanks. So on the second point, again, Anushka, forgive me, you're going to have to wait until I come to Parliament. Of course, I will set the record straight in any way that I can. But on the your point about safe and legal routes, I just think it's crucial for people to understand that the UK is very, very generous. And we should be proud as a country of what we do to welcome people. 185,000 just in the last few years. And it's not just the people who came under op pitting from Afghanistan. We're opening our arms to more. What we're doing with the Ukrainian scheme is two uncapped systems of looking after people coming from Ukraine. This is a country that is built on successful immigration by safe and legal routes. But what we're trying to do is to buttress that, to shore it up in people's imaginations, to make sure that people believe in it and trust our immigration system by cracking down on the illegal approach and on the people smuggling. And I just want to say something about Rwanda, because I think there's a risk of stereotyping here. And Rwanda is totally transformed over the last few decades. It's a very, very different country from what it was. And we are making sure that we have a very, very high degree of confidence about the way people will be received in Rwanda. We're today publishing a long memorandum of understanding between the UK and Rwanda about how they will be received and treated. And this is not something that we have put together overnight. This has been 9 months in preparation. So I would just urge people, not to think in a blinkered way about Rwanda. There will be, I think that this is the prototype of a solution to the problems of global migration flows that is likely to be adopted by other countries. I know that there are other European countries that are already in similar discussions, not just with Rwanda, but others. Billions of people are going to be moving across the face of the planet. We need sensible partnerships to address those flows. Theo Usherwood of LBC.
Prime Minister, last year more than 28,000 migrants crossed the Channel. Is your aim to bring that number down, and what will you do if this policy fails to do that? And just on Partygate, you told the Commons on December the 8th that it goes without saying that if the rules were broken, and then there will be disciplinary action for all those involved. When you go to Parliament next week and you speak to MPs and you're in the House of Commons, will you detail what that disciplinary action is that you've imposed on those who work for you and indeed yourself?
Thanks, Theo. I can certainly tell you that I will be updating, as I said to Anushka and to Nick, I'll be updating Parliament on all that next week. But on your first point about the numbers, look, you're right. The numbers were high last year, but this year they're going to be even higher. There's no doubt about it. I mean, they're already just in the first few months of this year, they're higher than they were over the comparable period last year. They're growing. This is the people smugglers are now becoming very adept. They're getting their boats, these frail things that you'll have seen. They're getting them in huge numbers. It looks as though they're being manufactured to order in China. They have a whole system going now, and we need in a humane and compassionate way to interrupt their business model. They're making, I think Dan told me, what, 350,000 euros a boat, something like that. This is a lucrative trade for them. It is an evil trade, and it's undermining people's confidence in safe and legal migration. We need to emphasize the safe and legal routes and undermine what the people smugglers are doing. And I just want to be absolutely frank with people, Theo. This is not something, or this is, I think, the deal that we're doing with Rwanda is an essential part of the solution, but it is not the total solution. It is a part of it is one of several steps that we're taking to beat the problem. John Stevens, Daily Mail.
Hi, thank you, Prime Minister. Can I just clarify, is it your aim to bring the numbers crossing the Channel illegally eventually down to zero? And on your relationship with Rishi Sunak, is he in danger of being moved as Chancellor, or can you say today that he's got that job for as long as he wants it?
Yeah, sorry. So yes to the second, and yes to, I think, to the first. Obviously, we do want to make sure that I'd like to get it down to zero. I think everyone in this room would like to get it down to zero. I think people in this room do an absolutely heroic job, and it's incredibly difficult to get the balance right and to be firm, but also to be humane and compassionate to people, very, very vulnerable people who are, who are doing something that is extremely brave and extremely dangerous, and which they shouldn't be doing. What we want to show people is that this is not only dangerous, but also likely to end in failure for you, that you're taking the wrong step, that there is a better solution, and you should wait and go via the safe and legal route and not fall victim to the people smugglers. That's what we're trying to do. Aubrey Allegretti from The Guardian.
Thank you, Prime Minister. On top of the concerns about the human rights record of Rwanda, where people who will be fleeing to the UK might obviously be sent because they're facing persecution at home, there's also a cost element. One estimate puts it at £2 million per person per year, and a Conservative MP, Andrew Mitchell, has suggested it would be cheaper to put people up at the Ritz instead. So are you comfortable with the cost element of the plan? And on the party situation you faced, why do we have to wait another week? Can you tell us whether or not you're going to rule out resigning, whether you faced 1, 2, 3 or more fines? Thank you.
Okay, so Aubrey, second question, I redirect you to what I said earlier on. I'm afraid that that won't give you any particular surprise. I said quite a lot about this on earlier in the week. I think I should wait till Parliament gets back to update Parliament fully. And on your point about cost, look, what's happening already? The asylum system is already costing this country £1.5 billion a year. The hotel costs are now £5 million a day. You talk about the Ritz. They're now £5 million a day, and it's climbing. And unless we can beat the business model of the gangs, I'm afraid it will continue to climb. And what we need to put in place is the deterrent system that will change their minds, make them see that they've made the wrong deal and that there's a better path for them if they really want to come to the UK. And that's what we're doing today. Last question to Jonathan Riley of The Sun.
Prime Minister, can you guarantee to the British people that under your premiership there will be no more small boats? And secondly, the Home Secretary is in Kigali today. Would she not be better off being in Paris, speaking to the French officials there and prioritising a bilateral deal with France to stop this? And are you confident that post-French elections that deal will be struck? Thank you.
Look, I think that's really, Jonathan. I think that is the most important issue that you've touched on, and I think it's the issue that's uppermost in everybody's minds because who studied this problem. And so, can I guarantee that we're going to get rid of the small boats problem? No, obviously not. I think that what we can hope to do is to demolish the business model and greatly to deter those who come here. But to say that we're going to get down to zero anytime soon is unlikely. And what we're proposing today is, I think, certainly a radical plan, but it will take a while to come fully and properly into effect. But I just want to say on France and on Paris, and many other ministers have been continually in Paris over the last couple of years trying to negotiate a returns agreement, trying to sort this problem out. And it has been disappointing and frustrating that we've been unable to do that. The French say it needs to be done at an EU level. That hasn't been negotiable either. In my view and the view of many people who studied this, there is more that could be done to intercept people at the French side. There is more that could be done on the beaches in France and now in Belgium as well. But we're not here to try to find fault with anybody else today. Today is about the UK coming up with its own solution in the absence of a proper agreement with France. And that's what we're doing, and we'll continue to work with. I mean, a lot of the cooperation with the French is excellent. We just think it could go further, and there's more to do. I think that'd be probably a fair summary of it. But in the meantime, before we get that, what we need to do is have a more radical solution that enables us as the UK to offer our own package and to undermine the business case of the people traffickers. And that's what we're doing. That's the purpose of this whole package: the military primacy, the new reception centres, and the new migration and economic partnership deal with Rwanda. That's what we're trying to do. I'm not going to pretend it will work overnight, but I do believe that in time this is the best way forward. It is the morally right thing to do. It's the humane and the compassionate thing to do as well, because we cannot have people continuing to die at sea, paying huge sums to evil people traffickers who are simply exploiting their hopes and their ambitions. We need to encourage them to take the safe and legal route if they want to come to this country. Thank you all very much. Thank you. Thank you.